Shalom and welcome to the Middle East Report. In this program today we have a prominent Christian who's a singer, a songwriter, a TV personality on his new book called Why Israel, designed for Gen Zs. Chip, warm welcome to the Middle East Report. I think it's the first time you've ever been on this program, so it's great that you're here all the way from Manchester today to really talk about your new exciting book, Why Israel.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks for having me on. I've been watching what you guys are doing, love what's happening, and excited about what's to come.
Excellent, superb. So we do have a connection, particularly with Manchester. So I spent 3 years there with the University of Manchester. So I'm very, very familiar with Manchester as a city. So it's also your home.
You know how clean and how friendly we all are.
I think you could say that for people in Liverpool rather than Manchester, but that's my own personal opinion. Just say it's a great pleasure and honour that you could be on the Middle East Report today. And I personally want to thank you for your courage and your bravery to stand up for Israel, particularly after October the 7th, when so many Christian personalities and celebrities wouldn't do so. But you've stood your ground, and well done for doing that, and thank you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I wish more of us did. But, push comes to shove, and you've got to stand up for what you believe in. Otherwise, you'll fall for anything.
Absolutely. So share with us your journey. So you were born in the United States, in 1977. So you're a little bit younger than me.
Right at the end of 77. I have to get that right.
No, absolutely. So share with us what your life was like living in Florida, your childhood in the States as well, and something about your parents as well, because your father is a very prominent worship leader as well.
Yeah, that's right. So born in Vero Beach, born in somewhere else in Florida, but we kind of grew up in Vero Beach till I was 12. Dad was a worship pastor of Central Assembly of God there in Vero for 12 years, and really saw it grow from a small church to a pretty big church. I wouldn't say mega church, but it was pretty big. We had our own radio station. Mom led the dance team, which was still pretty new at that time. Our Assemblies of God people allowed to dance, and so we loved that. And I had a really great upbringing. I went to Dodgertown Elementary. My school was adopted by the Los Angeles Dodgers. They did their spring training every springtime there in Vero. And so, I got to meet famous baseball players. My biggest dream as a kid was to be the first person to play baseball on the moon, because where we were was just down the road from Cape Canaveral, where you could see the shuttles going off, and I love baseball. And all I'm saying is that nobody's done it yet, Simon.
No, that's very true. It's very true. But I think on to more serious matters, though, for this program. But share with us something about how music has been so instrumental in your life, and of course the Lord with your family as well as the arts as well. So share with us where this interest in culture and performing arts comes from.
Yeah, so Dad was a worship pastor. He would always create loads of opportunities for us kids to be able to shine. He was a director of huge productions that we would put on there at the church. Not only that, we would do outreach events where we'd fill the local football stadium. And, I remember one of my earliest memories performing on stage was I was invited to perform the 50 States That Rhyme in front of 7,000 people in this little football stadium. And I thought that was such a big deal at the time. And it was for what it was. And so Dad was really great at creating opportunities for us to do that. And it was really once I moved to Israel that I started to produce albums with my sister, with my parents, and all of that. But yeah, right up until the age of 12, I was already getting into music.
Amen to that. And share with us when you came to faith in Yeshua. Obviously, you come from a very prominent, Christian family, and of course the Bible and Christianity is kind of central to kind of your family. So you kind of grew up in that environment. But when did you make that personal decision to serve the Lord Jesus Christ for yourself? Yeah,
it's a great little story. I don't remember it very well. My mom actually remembers it better than I do. We were leaving church on our way to Burger King, I think. And I said to my mom, I was about 4 or 5 years old, I said, Mom, everybody at church today was talking about having Jesus in their heart. I was like, that sounds like a horrible thing. You wouldn't want a man to live inside your chest. And she was like, yeah, having Jesus in your heart doesn't mean that you invite a man to live inside your chest. It kind of means putting him on the driver's seat of your life. And she explained it to me in a way that I could understand. And by the end of that conversation, I said to her, well, in that case, I want in on this. I want to invite Jesus into my heart to sit on the driver's seat of my life and all of the things that I care most about. I want him to be the director of that. And it made sense to me at the time. I prayed a little prayer with her, and I believe it was a significant moment. My little sister, she wins the award, though, because she was in the back seat. She pipes up, I want Jesus in my heart, too. And so she prayed that prayer that day as well.
Amazing. And share with us when your Israel journey began. So, I mean, what a huge culture shock from living in the States in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
To moving to Israel when you were 12 and being a teenager in Israel. Share with us what that experience was like, particularly in the early 90s.
Yeah, I mean, it was around 1990 that we moved there, which I don't know if you remember your dates, but that was around the time that the first Gulf War was happening.
Scuds were coming over.
Scuds were coming in. Saddam Hussein, President Bush at the time, senior, was offering a free flight out of Israel. Any Americans that are there, move out. But we really believe that God called us to move to Israel. That's a whole story in itself. My dad's faith journey, really, because he, was a worship pastor, had a lot of faith in God, but he was invited to do what he thought was a once-in-a-lifetime choir performance in Israel with the ICEJ and the Feast of Tabernacles, the Christian celebration during the Feast of Tabernacles. But then when he came back, he thought it'd be fun to take us out as well as a family the following year. So that was, I think, 88, 89, something like that. And while we were there in 1989, again, we all just thought this was like a once-in-a-lifetime moment where we get to visit the Holy Land and do the tour and all that. And little did we know that within 12 months, so middle of 1990, I was 12 and a half, we were moving there, 2 suitcases each, totally by faith. And, Dad was even saying to me and my sister, if you guys have a check in your spirit about this, we're not going to go. Like, we really believe God said this. But we did in our own little way. I was 12. I think she was about 10 at the time. We prayed about it, felt like God said this is a big thing to do. And Simon, it was tough. It was hard. Not only were we moving there in the middle of a war, we didn't speak the language. My mom didn't know how to cook their food. I didn't have any friends. It was really, really tough. And I would say probably a good year, maybe 2 years, was a genuine wilderness experience for me. Do I really believe in this stuff? Do I believe what the Bible says? And it helped that I got to hang out with some really cool Bible experts and scholars, and we would do Shabbat school, instead of Sunday school. We would have Shabbat with these guys who were, like the Indiana Jones of the day, discovering all the coolest things that there were to discover, and showing that the Bible is true. And the things that are written about in the Bible, they have dates, they have places, they have names assigned to them, and you can go to those places. So that was a really big moment for me to decide, yes, I believe in this. And I actually read the whole Bible. By the time I was about 16, 17 years old, I didn't think it was that big of a deal because I had friends over there that had done it younger than me. But I really started to plug into God's Word and into music significantly. When I was 12, I wrote my first song. And it was a real moment between me and God. I was sat at my keyboard, totally bored out of my skull. Here I was, in the Holy Land when I was used to having my own I had my own little basketball court back in Florida. And, I'm sitting there working this out, the chords, and I had a few lessons from my grandfather. And as I wrote this song, I just started to well up because I thought, I think this is a gift from God. And God, I just want you to know that every song I write, I'm always going to write it for you. And so that was a significant moment for me. And now, literally, I've written thousands of songs since then, Simon. That was a really significant moment for me.
But what impact would you say living in Israel as a teenagers had on you? Because we know that our teenage years are so fundamental to how we look at the world, how we kind of develop as young adults into adulthood. They are absolutely essential. So share with us what impact had being in Jerusalem during the 90s. And of course, we had the historic Oslo Accord signing between Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat in September 1993. And then, of course, in the mid-90s, we had the horrific suicide bombings that took over Israel as well. So, my first time in Israel was for 3 months in 96. So I know what Israel was like in the mid-90s. But I didn't know what it's like to live in Israel. I was there for 3 months.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, we would travel actually about 6 months out of every year. We were all over the world. By the time I was 18, I'd been in 25 different nations. And really, Dad was great at this. We would go on the road as a family singing and ministering. But, our time in Israel, we never felt in danger. And Dad would always talk about the fact that they don't really have gang issues, like in New York. It was different things that you were worried about, getting on the bus and them checking your bags. That was normal for me. going into a shop and them checking your bags, looking for bombs, looking for knives, looking for anything like that. This was the intifada that we were living through. And yet we didn't feel alarmed. Anytime you saw a young person walking around with an Uzi, the IDF, you actually felt like you had your own personal bodyguard that was there. At the same time, we recognized that a lot of the world was believing lies about Israel. And so we felt it was part of our ministry, part of our great honor to be able to travel the world and say, hey, we're a family, American family, living in Israel. Let us tell you what's really going on. And so, yeah, right from the get-go, it was a powerful time.
I'll show you one of my first experiences of ever being in Israel. So I flew into Ben Gurion Airport on my own, had to wait there for a few hours, got a shroot up to Jerusalem to the Hebrew U to pay my check-in. You get there and say, I need to go to a place called Kibbutz Ein Shvet, which is near Haifa in the Carmel Hills. Where is it? And they go, I'm an Israeli and I don't even know. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to have to really study the directions. Get on a bus from Jerusalem Central Station all the way up to Haifa. You're on a bus, you're surrounded by ultra-Orthodox, you're sitting next to an Israeli soldier with an M16 assault rifle, you're listening to the Spice Girls and Oasis on the radio. That was my first ever experience really of Israel. That was my first day in Israel.
What a melting pot. I was a big film buff when I lived out there, and I went to the cinema to watch The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the C.S. Lewis classic, right? And I'm in the the cinema, and as I'm looking around, the whole cinema fills with religious Orthodox Jewish guys, and I'm thinking, hang on a second, what about not bearing false witness, image, bearing any image? I'm like, you never ever see them in the cinemas. So I thought, what is going on here? And so we're watching the whole movie, no word of a lie, Simon. It gets to the scene where the lion jumps on the witch and attacks. They all stand up and they start clapping and like standing ovation in this moment. And I'm having this incredible moment, a bit like you on the bus. I'm like, I'm in Israel, surrounded by religious Jews, watching a story written by a Christian man from England, and this moment, and they all celebrate. And I thought, how incredible that C.S. Lewis was able to write an allegory, even back then, about the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and it still translates all these years later.
Amazing, amazing. So show us how you started your band, the Band with No Name, and why did you call it the Band with No Name?
Okay, yeah.
I think I probably know, but I'm sort of guessing a little bit. But.
It's great. So we're fast forwarding over a bunch of stuff, which is fine. I ended up moving to California from Israel when I was 18, 19. Went to an arts college there, met a beautiful young lady from Gateshead, Newcastle upon Tyne, and we were just really good friends for a couple of years while we were out there. And then we ended up moving to England, got married. Nice. And after we got married, everybody kept saying, you guys should audition for these ministry bands. There was like the Worldwide Message Tribe. Do you remember them, the Tribe? They were really big at the time, and so we auditioned there, and they were like, well, that's great, we want to have you, but we're actually about to wrap up the Tribe. Why don't you audition for this other band? It doesn't have a name yet, but it's going to be the touring band for a ministry that was fronted by the same people who started the Tribe. And so we auditioned for that, got in, and that ended up being called the Band with No Name. In all honesty, I don't know who's watching this program, but it was a little bit of a marketing thing to begin with. Our manager had managed to get thebandwithnoname.com as a website, and so they turned it into this kind of like, just suggest a name for the band, and then we'll put the top 10 names on the website. And then we did that for a long time, and then they chose, one of the options was to just keep it called The Band with No Name, and actually like 85% of the people voted that we just keep the name The Band with No Name. And so we kept it, but we liked it because in a way it pointed people to the fact that we're not about trying to make a name for ourselves. Really, we're the nameless, faceless generation. Remember, a lot of people were talking about that at the time. But we're here to lift up the name that is above every name, because that's the name that we want to big up. That's the name.
Absolutely. And share with us some of the kind of pitfalls of the music industry and being a prominent Christian, even within kind of Christian bands and everything else, because you are on the public stage, you are in that kind of public arena and everything else. Your life then becomes examined in kind of micro detail.
Yeah, music is powerful. Music is almost like another element. People talk about, water and fire and all that stuff. Music is like a whole other universe. And when you bring music into the situation, people's emotions open up. And that's not just in a good way, that can be in a bad way. So if they're a little bit angry, a lot of that is expressed in anger. If they're a little bit worried, a lot of that can come out in the music. If they're a little bit in love or romantic or whatever, then a lot of that can come out as well. And so, yeah, there were a few situations that we were in where it was like, you know, we really saw at the time music as a tool for communicating the good news of Yeshua, of Jesus, and everything that we did. And so we were not your typical pop band. We were a pop band with a message and with a mission. And I think we did pretty good at that. We did that for about 9 years with, you know, influx, outflux of different members of the band for different reasons, a lot of what you're asking about. But some of it was just they felt called and led to do something else. And so we really championed them as well. I think in terms of the power of music, that never really left me, you know. So when the Band with No Name finished, I didn't skip a beat. I mean, the next month I launched the Chip Kendall Band. I told people I went from the Band with No Name to the Band with My Name. And we still get booked for gigs out in Norway and all over the world, in US. Some stuff is opening in Soul Children, and it's a network of choirs and music. So music will always, I really believe God's given me a heart of worship. That's part of how he's wired me. It's always going to be part of what I do.
And share with us how you also combine this with your passion for Israel and the Jewish people, because this is also such a key part of your life, and you've been able to use your notoriety to really defend Israel and the Jewish people, especially after the horrors of October the 7th.
Yes, no, it's true. You know, a lot of the people, my friends that I connected with out there in Israel when I lived there are still doing stuff. In fact, my friend Shani Ferguson is married to Kobe Ferguson, who I co-wrote the book with, and they own, as Ma'oz, they own probably the best recording studio in Jerusalem, and they're constantly working with the kind of up-and-coming worship leaders over there, and just trying to give them some rocket fuel to keep doing what they're doing. I think for me personally, in the Chip Kendall music, I've begun to explore with my son. My son is 17 years old, like getting into music big time. He's really good at what he does. And he and I, together with our friend from church, Shay, otherwise known as LC Beats, we've actually written a song which is called Baruch Haba, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. It's in Nigerian, English, and in Hebrew. And it's got this kind of Afrobeat flavor to it. And we're just doing everything we can to introduce this whole idea of God's heart for Israel to another generation.
A patient's life genesis till I had a revelation. Found God and I'll take him to the nation.
And doing it in a really cool, fun way. Still going into schools. I've actually written a song for an organization called Home for Good, which is a fostering and adoption agency. Amazing what they're doing over here in England. But we realized that we were invited to go and perform at the Civic Leaders event for Holocaust Memorial Day. The mayor of Manchester is going to be there, Andy Burnham.
Wow. And
so they're like, what song are you going to do? And I thought, well, they're talking about the Holocaust. They're talking about these candles that are burning in memory of the Holocaust. Both the people who were killed in the Holocaust, the kids that were killed in the Holocaust, but also the people who actually made it out because of the kinder transport. And I thought, how about Will You Make Room for Me? That's the song we wrote for the adoption agency. But if you look at the words and kind of rethink them, it works for that as well. And so we've got a whole school choir coming to perform at that. Soul Children Marple is going to be performing there. So I'm excited to see what the uptake is of that, because there's going to be loads of people from the Jewish community as well as loads of civic leaders from Manchester that are there in the same room. So ask me again after that happens in January.
So let's see Ma'oz, Israel.
We're here at the location of the Nova Festival. It's been turned into a memorial where there's pictures of those who were murdered and those who were kidnapped and those who there is no trace of them. And people come out here from all over the country. It's just an open field with memorial candles and pictures. And each picture represents a life of someone, a child that was raised in this country by a family that knew the cost of living here. You know the price, you know the cost of having to be here, and still when it's taken, it's hard. We were chosen to live here. We can't help that we were chosen to live here. And it's an honor that we were chosen to live here. And still, it's hard. On October 7th, when sirens were going off and rockets were flying overhead, Israelis thought that they knew what was happening, and so they went into these portable bomb shelters called miguniot. If you want to come inside, this is why they were a death trap, because they have no door. So if there's a rocket coming in, they'll keep you safe. Just like you heard. But what happens is terrorists come, and when you have the place full of Israelis, they threw grenades inside. There was one guy who took it on himself to come to the door and toss the grenades back out. He saved many, many lives until he grabbed one grenade a little too late. Each one of these photos represents a life, a person, a family that raised them, siblings that will miss them, parents that don't know where they are. It took a long time to clean up this area. It's just an open field, but it was full of tents, large tents, small tents, blankets, shoes. So much stuff was abandoned here. And then came the people and had to clean up the bodies. Every picture you see here represents one. Emergency workers, first responders that came down here while rockets were still flying overhead. Sometimes we live through harrowing times that we say we will share with our grandkids. I think these are stories the first responders will not be able to share. These are stories you don't want to share, because all you can tell them is of the horror. How do you pass down horror and hope to another generation?
Great to see there, Chip working alongside Moaz Israel, which is a messianic Jewish ministry that reaches out to the Jewish people. I have to ask you, good friends with Brian as well, the UK director as well, so he's regularly been on the Middle East Report. But I suppose with the context of discussing your new book, Why Israel, when we talk about Israel today, everything pretty much is in the context to what happened on October the 7th. You know, the biggest mass terrorist attack in Israel's history by Hamas, where Hamas murdered over 1,200 Israeli nationals and foreign nationals, injuring between 6,000 and 7,000, and took over 251 hostages back to that hellhole that is Gaza. The death, the destruction, the mutilation, the raping, absolutely horrific crimes against humanity committed against Israel. Where were you on that evil day, October the 7th, and when did you fully become aware of the horrors that were unfolding in a country that you've spent so much time in?
Yeah, I was in Manchester. I was in a car park. I remember exactly where I was. I was in a car park praying over the phone with some friends of mine, Tom and Melissa Pollard, who are doing really great stuff, British couple, young couple, songwriters. And they're working with us on a musical about the life of Esther. We've been working on it for years, definitely before October 7th happened. And we were having a conversation because they were planning a trip out to Israel, and I just wanted to pray and prophesy over them. And I closed my eyes to prophesy, and straight away I just see this desert, and I see this huge explosion, like a sandstorm. It reminded me of that Mission Impossible scene where Tom Cruise is running out of the sand, and I'm like, what is that all about? And I tried to, give some sort of interpretation to it to them while I was praying. And we were so excited because we were due that next month in November to do a trip to Israel with a load of influential worship leaders over here. The Ma'oz Israel Worship Artist Tour is what we called it. It had a little logo for it and everything. Anyway, then come to find out, the news starts coming in. This is bad. This is really bad. Because you remember it was a religious holiday for them.
Yeah, Simchat Torah, wasn't it? And also it was a Shabbat as well, the end of Sukkot, the end of the Jewish high holidays.
Oh, it was horrible. And so stuff started to come out. And I turned to my wife and I said, the world's going to go one of two directions. It's going to be those who have been to Yad Vashem and they see that history is repeating itself after the Holocaust. And those who are just oblivious. They've never been to Yad Vashem. It's gonna turn into a political story. Nobody's gonna get this. And I mean, I hate to say it, but I was absolutely right. Yeah, have you been to Yad Vashem before?
Many times.
You can see even the part that Christianity had, and early Christianity, in building anti-Semitism. And a lot of that was down to the church's believing of lies and their ignorance to the Bible and what the Bible has to say about the nation of Israel and God's heart for the Jewish people. Something called replacement theology, which I'm sure you've probably talked about loads here. And I mean, you could literally see it start to happen. I start losing my friends on Facebook. People start seeing what I'm posting because I'm posting the truth of what's actually going on. Well, they'd rather believe some of the lies, and we know now, post the top person at BBC having to step down and the top person at BBC News having to step down.
And of course the Glastonbury performance as well. Was absolutely horrific.
Unbelievable. Why are they posting that on there? It's just lies. And so, my heart really began to ache thinking, what is going on? And I would have privately conversations with people, on Facebook or in person, where I'm trying to explain the truth to them and they cannot see past their truth that they've believed now, because of course they watch the news and they hear all these reports and, oh, here's a letter written by a church in Gaza talking about all of these horrible things that are happening to them. And I'm like, why do you believe that that's really written by a church and for those reasons? Oh, because of this and that. No, that's a total lie. And I mean, Simon, it's hard when you've got friends that you've known for years and years, whole movements that I was part of at the time. People that I thought would rally behind me and pray for Israel, not praying for Israel. Churches, I go into churches all the time. Churches that were, just months previously had a massive Ukrainian flag on their screen. Let's pray for the nation of Ukraine. This is terrible what's going on right now. And then October 7th happens. A few weeks go by. I'm thinking, okay, surely they're going to put a massive Israeli flag on the stage, and let's pray for Israel. It's going, nothing, absolutely nothing. And that's to the shame of the church here in the UK. I can't vouch for anything in America. I could see stuff online. There were some churches. There was one Irish pastor. Did you see that? His name was Pastor John. And he stood up on his stage not long after October 7th. And man, he delivered it strong with his Irish accent. He gave a great defense for Israel and saying we need to pray. And
that's a much harder environment, Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and the rest of the UK to stand up for Israel. So I know, which is very difficult. But as a musician and as a songwriter, give us your thoughts on what happened to Nova, the Nova Music Festival, where Hamas murdered 364 partygoers, all in their early 20s, and then kidnapped some 44 of them and took them back to Gaza. And I, as part of the Christian Media Summit, we went to the Nova Music Festival only a few weeks ago, the first time I've ever been there. And what strikes me is when you see all the pictures of all the young people that were murdered and cut down by Hamas on that evil day. And for me, particularly as I'm a big Arsenal fan, there was a British Jew who'd made Aliyah, and there's like the symbol of Arsenal, the cannon and the shield, and had Arsenal in Hebrew and his name on it, and talking about those things. So all the personal details regarding one individual that was like murdered at Nova, visiting one of the car parks that held 1,200 cars that were shot to bits or burnt to bits, seeing in a powerful documentary called Highway 242, The Killing Roads, by my friend who produced that documentary. And it just brings back the sheer horror and magnitude of what happened. But as a musician, share with your thoughts of what happened at Nova.
Yeah, because it was a desert rave, you know, and I'd heard about these things. They're going on. And unfortunately, Simon, as a believer, my heart breaks that a lot of that goes on, because there's a lot of drug taking that happens at those things. They're worshiping idols at those things. It's out and out New Age stuff that's happening. But when you think about the humanity of what's going on, that's where it strikes you. Like you said, when you go and you visit and you see it for yourself. Did you go to the place where they've got all the cars, all the burnt out cars?
Oh, yeah, I've done a report from there.
Just rows and rows and rows of blown out cars, shot up cars. You're like, what if that happened in London? What if that happened in Manchester? What if that happened anywhere around here? You better believe that the world should not be telling lies about it, first and foremost. But also any musician, I remember when the Ariana Grande event happened, right? The bombing.
Oh, the Manchester Arena attack.
Manchester Arena. And our church was in close proximity to that. And we had people running past our building covered in blood. We opened the doors of our church. We welcomed them in. We did something. We still remember that year on year. We still remember what happened. We say, hey, that's not going to happen again, not on our watch. Similarly, the synagogue attack that happened recently. I know Rafi Bloom is a really good friend of mine in the Jewish community, and he's in that. He's part of that synagogue. That's his synagogue that was shot by someone named Jihad. This is happening on our watch right now. They're like miniature versions, and it should be a wake-up call to everybody. Guys, we need to pray for this. This is another pandemic of lies, a pandemic of anti-Semitism, and churches especially need to be first in line to rise up to support our Jewish community at this time. Ask the question, what can we do to help? How can we help to protect you guys? What can we do to kind of change the storyline and make this about what God is actually trying to do here?
No, absolutely. So let's have a look at this very powerful and moving news report from CBN. This is entitled, Like a Second Holocaust. Nova Music Festival survivor shares her miraculous story of what happened on October the 7th.
2 years after surviving a terrifying experience on October 7th, Hadar Shavit describes herself as a happy person.
I'm a teacher. I teach math. I'm a homeroom teacher. I'm the head of all the classes on the 9th grade in the school that I'm working in. I'm a dancer. I love nature. I love my friends, and I love music. And at the Nova Music Festival, everything just combined together.
CBN News met up with Hadar in the same park that hosted the Nova Festival, attacked by Hamas.
We're very, very close to the Gaza border right now. Were you afraid? Did you feel like it was going to be safe here?
Even though it's next to the border, I don't need to feel afraid to be here. Actually, I feel the opposite. I feel very secure.
Some 3,500 Israelis showed up for the rave concert, and Hadar joined a group of 15 friends. Later, Hamas would attack, killing 378 people and kidnapping another 44. Miraculously, Hadar and her friends would make it out alive. They took several cars, and Hadar rode with her friend Shalev.
He's really important in my story because we survived everything from the beginning till the end, like hand to hand.
Early that morning, rockets started flying, and organizers told them to leave.
Immediately, I started to talk with my father. So he told me that the terrorists just broke the border and they came in to my area. And I was like, no, they're far away. Like, I never thought that I will meet them.
Hadar and Shalev tried to escape in his car. After being stuck in traffic, Hadar feared they would be hit by a rocket, so they abandoned the car.
Shalev and I just went back to the festival area where the bar was and the main stage and the yellow toilets. We were there till 8:15.
That's when reality set in.
I just heard gunshots and a lot of people just running through my direction, and Shalev holding my hand and was looking at me and just telling me, run as fast as you can. Then I realized, okay, they are here. It's a terror attack.
According to the IDF, about 120 terrorists intended to target the Israeli city of Netivot. They took a wrong turn and ended up at the festival where thousands of Israelis were celebrating.
So then they saw all the traffic that we created because of the festival, and they decided to change their mission. We were the new mission of the terrorists.
As Hadar and Shalev tried to escape, they hid under one bush after another.
Yeah, I saw people just getting shots and falling on the ground. And when you see it, you just don't realize that you see what you see is true. This is terrifying and still in my mind and in my dreams at night.
Then they had to flee again. Hadar took us to the open field where they ran, dodging terrorists and bullets.
I'm in the phone with my dad. And I was like, Dad, I cannot run anymore. I can't run anymore. I can't. And he was like, run, don't worry, run. Everything's gonna be okay, run. And I was like,
So were the terrorists, did they see you? Were they shooting at you?
yeah. I heard bullets whistle in my ear, like, "Fiu, fiu, 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 fiu."
We then went to this orchard where Hadar showed us a tree like the one where they hid.
It was like God just put this orchard, and I was like, how I didn't saw it before. I heard people got murdered, women got raped, screaming people, and then silence, a lot of gunshots and RPGs and grenades and missiles, and seriously, chaos, hell. I just felt like, that's what I heard all the time, boom.
With fruit on the tree, the branches formed what she called a dome where they sat for 5 hours.
There were walking terrorists like over here inside the orchard. We saw them, we heard them, they didn't saw us. There were a lot of miracles inside this orchard, a lot of miracles.
Finally, when the shooting eased up, they heard Israeli soldiers and left their hiding place.
We said, civilians, don't shoot on us, because we surprised them. And then I realized that I don't need to be any more close with my emotions, that I can cry, that I can scream, that I can express my fear.
The soldiers took her to the Ofakim police station where father and daughter were reunited.
The hug that we gave to each other, I felt like, I cannot explain the feeling. And then from that moment, the PTSD war started.
Right. Hadar believes she's now on a mission to share her story.
I'm Jewish, I'm Israeli, and this is the history. It's like a second Holocaust.
She wants the world to know Israel is a peaceful place despite the enemy's desire to destroy it.
I know it sounds funny because all the wars that we're going through, but the people are peaceful and we all want just peace in the world. We are the only Jewish country in the world, so when you say what is Zionism, Zionism is just the right for the Jewish people to have a land for their own and to have a place for their own and country for their own.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, the Nova Festival Memorial at Re'im, Israel.
And we thank CBN for that powerful and moving testimony of what happened at the Nova Music Festival back on October the 7th, 2023. We have to pray because many of those partygoers are committing suicide. Many of them feel guilty that their loved ones were murdered or their friends were taken hostage by Hamas and taken to Gaza and still suffering those emotional scars and pains. I mean, music can be a big healer, can't it? And stuff as well. And, you know, if we consider, for example, what happened at Nova and consider what happened if something like that happened at Glastonbury, there would be international, worldwide condemnation on those terrorists who committed the worst crimes since the Holocaust, or even worse, over 80 years ago in the Holocaust. And the world would be outraged, particularly millennials and Gen Zs as well. So share with us why you think there's so much silence when it comes to the attack on Jewish people and Israelis.
Yeah, do you know, I think a lot of it is misunderstandings, misinformation, disinformation. A lot of it is out and outright anti-Semitism that is in the world. It's like a cancer. It's hideous. It reveals its ugly head in different ways. I think Jonathan Sachs had a great quote about that. You know, I think you mentioned music again. I hope it's okay to go back to this.
Of course.
You're right. Music, you know, can be devastating. It can also bring healing. I believe that music is part and parcel of God's strategy for bringing healing there as well. I could tell a great story about how a whole group of us ended up there on October 7th, 2 years on, and we were able to sing the song, "The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you," the Aaronic blessing. And we had people coming up to us in tears. This is at the Nova music site. And we were in the little bandstand where, you know, everybody was gathered around. And there were hundreds of people there, because obviously it's the 2-year anniversary of October 7th. People coming to us in tears at the end. One lady said she'd never cried for 2 years. And you know, you'll get this a lot over in Israel. People say, we haven't breathed for 2 years. You know, our hearts are still held captive in Gaza. This is while there were still hostages being held. And so I do believe music can also be a great healing source for people as well. There's that really great quote from St. Augustine. He said, "He who sings prays twice." Have you heard that? He who sings prays twice. There's something at work going on there. And you know, Jehoshaphat in the Bible, he sent the praisers out in the front of the army. Could it be that actually this is like an unfolding of that happening again, that these guys were right at the spear tip, right there on the border with Gaza? Obviously their music was not glorifying to God, but maybe there's an alternative to that, music that does glorify God, being part of the healing of that nation as well.
Absolutely. And I just want to touch on your home city, Manchester, as well, because what we saw in Manchester has really rocked and devastated not only the Jewish community in Manchester, but also the Jewish community throughout the UK, where they no longer feel safe. And we saw that devastating terror attack on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, which is Yom Kippur, where we see that terrorist of Syrian descent. I don't know how he got into this country, but he did. And then using the first opportunity he had to kind of ram some of the worshippers going into the synagogue. And then he had to be shot by the police before he could kill any more with a knife or do any more damage. Just share with us this reality now that the Jewish community, particularly in Manchester, has to live with that synagogue attack, because this is a reminder that as a nation, as Christians, we need to look after our precious Jewish community.
Yeah, absolutely. And in all honesty, Simon, I'm really proud of our Jewish community in Manchester. They've rallied around, and they've got these calendars that they're releasing. They, you know, every single Sunday, almost every single Sunday, they would hold a vigil right there downtown Manchester for the hostages. We had placards of the hostages. You know, it wasn't like a shouty thing. It wasn't confrontational at all. It was a vigil, genuinely a vigil. Sometimes we would bring flowers and lay them. Sometimes we would light candles. And the abuse that was shouted at us as we did that, unbelievable. But equally, that just made our Jewish community more resilient. They had already planned something. I want to get the date right, but I think it was October 5th, which was just a couple of days after the attack on the synagogue. They were already planning to do this gathering together. And that was the first thing I asked Rafi Bloom, you know, when I was messaging him after I heard about it happening in Manchester. I said, "We're still going ahead with October 5th? He goes, "Yes, we're still going ahead with October 5th. And my prayer, my hope, I wasn't actually in the country at the time. I was in Israel on this trip, but my prayer was that more churches would get involved to show their support for the Jewish community. And it's not like a polished, clean, tidy story to finish with. I don't think we're doing enough. I still don't think we're doing enough to show the Jewish community that we're standing with them. And I'm speaking for Manchester. My hands up. You know, we're doing everything we can. We're offering our support. But what does that look like? What's tangible about that? Our church, Audacious Church, was one of the only churches to host any kind of a prayer event or anything that was, you know, stepping up for Israel. It was in November, just after October 7th happened, 2023. So November 2023, we hosted a night to pray for Israel and pray for the peace of Israel. We had Jewish people come. One lady rolled her sleeves up, and she had a giant Magen David Adom, a big Star of David. No, Magen David. That rolls off my tongue. Red Star of David is MDA.
Exactly.
But it was just a Star of David. It wasn't red. Sorry, MDA. But, and she said, she goes, since October 7th, I haven't been able to pull my sleeves up. But in this place, I feel safe to do so.
Wow.
And man, we had Jewish people in tears. We had Christians in tears, working together, praying together to do something about it.
Amazing. So share with us this new book that you've co-written called Why Israel, to really explain the biblical importance of Israel to the Gen Z generation.
Yes, thank you so much for letting me talk about this, Simon. So Why Israel, co-written Chip Kendall and Kobe Ferguson. Why Israel? Because the answer changes everything. Over 5 years, I've been working for Ma'oz UK as their UK ambassador. And what we've discovered is sitting down loads of conversations with pastors, with teachers, with people who are pro-Israel, people who aren't pro-Israel, but they're young leaders, especially among the young Gen Z generation. What we were finding was that there was just a lot of people who didn't understand what the Bible has to say, not just about ancient Israel, but about modern Israel. And so we thought, well, how can we do it in bite-sized chunks, infographics, pictures, Bible verses? How can we do it in a way that's specifically aimed at young adult church leaders to have kind of a go-to guide and a reference point, but also for people to be able to give to their kids, their grandkids, or to their colleagues who are a little bit more tech savvy and that sort of thing, and are believing a lot of these lies are out there. How do we just find a really simple source for truth? And that's what we did. We wrote this book, and I can honestly tell you, Simon, everywhere we take it to sell it, it just sells out really quickly. We've already sold 500 copies in Portuguese in Brazil. We've set up a website for the English book, which is whyisraelbook.com. And what we're finding is there as well with the pre-orders, they're just flying in. People don't just want to buy one copy. They want to buy a bulk so that they can give them away, so that they can put them in the hands of the people that they really want to at least explore the truth and have something that stands in the face of all of the lies that are being told about it.
No, absolutely. But share with us the challenge that the Gen Z generation face when it comes to Israel. Thankfully, we have a Gen Z producer who's superb, who loves Israel, loves the Jewish people, and he's fabulous with my Jewish and Israeli guests on this program. And he does have such a big heart for Israel and the Jewish people. So we need more Gen Zs like himself to come to the fore. But share with us the challenge that generation faces, because, sadly, if you look at this country, you look at the supporters of Israel in this country, we're looking at those like 70 plus. You and I, Generation X, we're in a minority as well. But share with us the importance of reaching and also informing the Gen Z generation about God's plans and purposes for Israel and the Jewish people, because we know that this is a huge problem in the States as well, that it's so important to pass down what God is doing. And when you look at what God is doing in the world, there's only one country to look to, and that's the nation of Israel. Because only as of this recording, only of last week, the Israeli government announced that they were bringing home all the members of the Beni Mashai tribe, known as the tribe of Manasseh, home from northern India to Israel in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. That tribe that's been lost for over 2,700 years and now coming home to Israel in fulfillment of biblical prophecy.
Praise God.
So how can you say that God has rejected his people, that God has rejected Israel?
Wow.
When he's really moving so powerfully and also protecting Israel on 7 fronts after the aftermath of October the 7th, defeating Israel's enemies, Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Houthis, even the Iranian regime, and protecting the world from the world's most dangerous regime, the Iranian regime, acquiring nuclear weapons, which they then prevented a Holocaust from taking place, or the means of the Iranian regime to actually blackmail the West with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. Shout out to Nathan. His Hebrew name is Natan. We're so thankful for him. But you're absolutely right. When it comes to Gen Z, these guys are digital natives, and what some people would call a post-Christian generation. Some people would also say pre-revival generation. You could also look at the Charlie Kirk effect.
Absolutely.
And everything that happened there. It shows that people are looking at digital stuff and they're believing it. A lot of people came to church. They started coming to faith after Charlie Kirk's murder, assassination, whatever you want to call it. I honestly believe that we have an assignment as one generation. The Bible says one generation commends your works to the next. So if you are in that age demographic that you suggested earlier, do everything you can to help this next generation understand God's heart for them, for the Jewish people, for the nation of Israel. Send them on a trip if you're able to. You know, maybe you've already been 100 times. Send somebody younger than yourself and pay for them to go and to see and experience for themselves what God is doing over there in that place. I think there's so many things I could go into. I know we haven't really got loads of time, but one quick story is that, you know, the song I was writing when October 7th happened was actually from the Esther musical that I alluded to earlier. It's a song we wrote for Mordecai, where he says to God, you know, what did you do? What did I do to deserve this? You could have chosen a better man. I play it cool on the surface, but there's so much I don't understand. Like, where did I go wrong? Whose story should I choose to believe? Is this all a game to you? Because right now it feels like all I can do is breathe. And I had this incredible opportunity with my O's to actually do some filming in Hostage Square a year after October 7th happened. And they had a piano out there that belonged to one of the hostages. His name was Alon Ohel. And so I got to play his piano. And when I sat down, I started playing that melody. And this guy comes up to me speaking a mile a minute in Hebrew, young guy, Gen Z guy. And I grew up in Israel, but my Hebrew's a bit rusty, and they were filming me playing the piano. I didn't know what to do. My dad kind of pulled him over to one side. Anyway, it's a long story, but basically it turned out that the song that I was playing, the song that I was writing during October 7th, had been in his dreams. Oof. And then he said, the melody was in my dreams. He goes, you've been in my dreams. And I'm like, okay. And I thought, we need to do something about this, because I was there to comfort God's people. That's what the Bible says. In the end, Simon, I was able to pray with this guy. I was able to embrace him and hug him. I was able to, you know, tell him why I was there in the country. And we had a really great moment that led to right there. And that's Gen Z. So they are digital natives, but they're also hungry. I believe that they're ready for healing. They're desperate for healing. We need to be bringing our music. He said to me after we finished praying, he goes, don't stop coming. Don't stop bringing your music. We need you at this time. So I'm going to encourage any Gen Z people, you know, that are in the world or in the periphery, or even Gen Z people watching this right now. Israel needs us now. Now's the time to step up.
Amen. So let's have a look at this excellent CBN news report, really giving us a prophetic warning that we need to reach out to the younger generation, particularly Gen Z, with a message of Israel, because we know that support for Israel is falling, but we know that God is faithful to Israel and the Jewish people. Take a look.
A series of polls show support for Israel among American evangelicals under 30 fell more than 35% in just 3 years. There's added concern that misinformation across social media regarding the war in Gaza could lead to an even greater drop.
The reason why I think young evangelicals might remain very skeptical and not particularly supportive of Israel is because they're being bombarded with, I don't want to say anti-Israel messages, but not particularly favorable messages toward Israel at the time when they're forming their foreign policy beliefs.
3 surveys conducted by researchers at Boston University and UNC Pembroke from 2018 to 2021 indicate this change came during a pivotal turn in Israel-Palestine relations.
And what we found in that survey was that attitudes became more negative towards Israel.
As of 2021, roughly 1/3 of young evangelicals surveyed support Israel, compared to more than 2/3 in 2018. During that same period, support for Palestinians rose from 5% to almost 25%.
Free Palestine!
Also, the number of respondents saying they support neither Israel nor Palestine nearly doubled from 25% to almost 50%.
What has changed is the introduction of social media. Younger people now have much more diverse opportunity to get information than the other generations in the past did not have.
Another finding shows pastors are changing, including a drift in their support of Israel and how they interpret the Bible.
And that change is from a more pro-Israel, premillennial dispensationalist position to one that really does not see much importance to the contemporary state of Israel or the Jewish people in the end times and in the second coming of Jesus Christ.
The authors have published their findings in their book, Christian Zionism in the 21st Century, American Evangelical Opinion on Israel.
We have to understand.
Dr. Yoav Fromer at Tel Aviv University emphasizes the importance of this study.
That without the United States, Israel will not exist. And again, I say this as an Israeli.
He adds the future of the Jewish state depends on the next generation of U.S. evangelicals.
I don't know if my children will have a country to live in.
One unexpected outcome identified by doctors in Bari and Boomin is how this younger generation that is sometimes bombarded with pro-Israel messages can be turned off, comparing it to teenage angst or rebellion.
So on the one hand, we found that socializing with other young evangelicals who support Israel reduces support for Israel. On the other hand, we found that young evangelicals are very strongly motivated by perceptions of fairness. How fairly do Israelis treat Palestinians in the occupied territories? And if they feel that they're treated fairly, right, then they're more likely to support Israel.
The authors note several generational shifts, including changing beliefs on end-time prophecy and how Israel figures into it, which could potentially reshape the overall evangelical movement itself. They challenge leaders to engage young believers by using new methods and platforms that resonate with them. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Very important and also very informative news report there by CBN. And we will have to step up our game to encourage the next generation to take the fight and to have that biblical understanding of God's plans and purposes for Israel and the Jewish people. I suppose the big question is, and this is the Gen Z generation that have that hunger for truth. And also they have a hunger for righteousness. We've seen that, and we've seen the impact that Charlie Kirk has had over the Gen Z generation, effectively bringing hundreds of thousands to the Lord through his ministry. And sadly that was cut short, but God is sovereign, he knows what he's doing. Yes. But show us why Israel is so important, that why Israel is so essential to God's plans and purposes. And it's not just about defending a nation, but we know that this is the nation that 144,000 Messianic Jewish believers will take the gospel to the four corners of the earth during the darkest period of the tribulation period, bringing billions into the kingdom. But also we know that this is where Yeshua HaMashiach is going to reign from in Jerusalem during the millennial reign.
Well said, Simon. That's amazing. You know, I actually listened to the Charlie Kirk podcast now more since everything happened. And they talk about something called Turning Point Academy, and there are 3 pillars. I think I've got this right. Truth, goodness, and beauty. Think about truth, think about goodness, think about beauty. What civilization has carried those 3 so well for all these millennia? It's the Jewish people. It's Israel. Why? Well, God's hand is on them. There isn't really anything special about them, but we know that they're God's chosen people. And I believe that's the case, especially when it comes to Gen Z. If you want to connect with the truth, goodness, and beauty, look no further than Israel.
Amen. Perfect ending. So, Chip, it's been an absolute pleasure to host you on the Middle East Report today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Simon.
And I just want to thank you for watching this program at home. I think it's really important that we look at people's lives and look at Chip's life as well, being in that kind of public arena as a very prominent Christian, as a musician, as a songwriter, and also TV personality, and speaking up for Israel, and actually taking on the cost of what it means to stand with Israel, losing friends. But it's important as well that we reach out to the Gen Z generation, that you're not alone and that you need to know the truth for yourself. You need to know what the Bible says about Israel and the Jewish people, because there's a blessing in it. And that is the blessing that we can all endure, to know that God is working out his prophetic plans and purposes in Israel and through the nations. So thank you for watching the Middle East Report.